Why is it okay to make white characters black but not the other way around? Wait, who's the new James Bond? There are two types of characters when it comes to race. There are characters where race is a relevant aspect of the character. And there are characters where race isn't a relevant aspect of the character. Characters in the former category should only be changed if you are intentionally trying to do something interesting with the character and you've put a lot of thought into it. Characters that fall into the latter category can be played by anyone and it fundamentally doesn't matter. It so happens that, historically, the overwhelming majority of characters where the race wasn't really a relevant factor happened to have been defaulted to white. Meanwhile, and somewhat consequently, most non-white characters were explicitly written as non-white and not as characters where race was a non-factor. The end result is that the type of character who can and should be cast without much regard for the race of the actor has an overwhelming history of being portrayed as white and thus are more likely to be changed from white to something else in modern portrayals than the reverse, simply because there are so few historical non-white characters who could be made white without significantly changing the character. Of course, it's okay the other way round. Just look at Jesus, for example. I'm going to take this a step further and ask, why are the characters predominantly getting changed from white to black? If the goal is to be more diverse, then what about Hispanics and Asians? The one that grinds my gears is Anne Boleyn. She was a real-life white person. Why are they making her black? I think the live-action remake trend is pretty annoying, but the problem here is that studios go to make them and realize there are absolutely no people of color in the movie at all. Seriously, I'm fairly sure there isn't any in The Little Mermaid or 101 Dalmatians. So because they absolutely cannot release a movie with that lack of diversity, but can't just introduce a new character to a beloved IP. See the Mulan backlash. They end up casting a token black actor. And it's never any other POC to play a character whose race doesn't matter to update the story. That's why. Because Disney execs want diversity points without putting in the work and want to reuse old adored stories without having to pay to come up with an original story. Everyone involved is getting screwed over. My biggest issue is just turning existing white characters into black characters, instead of either reimagining the character, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, or creating completely new ones. Black Panther. It feels completely lazy and unimaginative. While we're on the subject, why are ginger characters being targeted in particular? The list of ginger characters being recast as darker-skinned is far too long to just be a coincidence. While I'm all for upping representation of POC in media, it needs to be done with class and substance, not a shallow reskin of an already existing character. Miles Morales being a prime example. I don't mind races being swapped as long as it doesn't affect the story or basic elements of the character. It's weird when you get things like geeky, wise-cracking little red-haired, freckled Jimmy Olsen going to tall, bald, confident black dude who isn't funny and dates Supergirl. But this could just be a DC thing. Haha face with hand over mouth, face with hand over mouth, face with hand over mouth. My biggest thing with this is I just wish there were a more earnest effort to make unique and exciting and challenging roles for POC, and to highlight them in the same way. Like, I get far more excited for my kids to see and learn about Black Panther and the difference in that character and the culture, than I do seeing a POC play a different hero that was previously white. I don't have a problem with it either direction. I just crave and long for a better highlighting of more interesting characters that begin as POC from the beginning. And a lot of that falls to the people creating these characters and these roles to make them compelling and interesting and to highlight what makes everybody different and unique in a really exciting way. I think this is the same issue with making all-female cast of already existing movies, i.e. Ghostbusters and Oceans. It feels like a really lazy way of Hollywood appealing to women. Instead of creating new ideas and relevant, progress enlightening motives, they just tweak already existing ideas. Same issue with every movie has 3 sequels that are progressively worse. Hollywood is not as progressive as they try to appear, and are mainly just concerned with money and trying to get people to believe what they want them to. It has been the other way around for a long time. There was a period of time where black people couldn't even be on TV. So white people in blackface played those characters. Most movies about Egypt up until the 90s had notorious amounts of white people as the major cast. There was a Michael Jackson movie coming out a few years ago where a white guy was playing Michael Jackson. Not even a fictional character but an actual human being whose whole ethnicity was being changed. Changing a character's or even a non-fiction person's ethnicity seems par for the course across the board as of late, whether that be changing them to or from a person of color. It was a lot more common in the reverse until about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. A new drama series about Anne Boleyn starts tonight in UK. She's being played by a black actress. Give this thread 24 hours before it suddenly gets active again. This irks me too. There's a TV series here in the UK where they've made Anne Boleyn, Henry V's wife, black. Just why? They would hate it if there was a TV series about MLK being white. I don't really have a huge problem with this most of time. The film I really had trouble with doing this was A Wrinkle in Time. It was a terrible adaptation of the book all around in my opinion. It was a pretty important part of the story that the characters were from Maine and the lead girl was a gawky Irish nerd. It just seems pretty opposite the storyline to have made the family African American and completely erased the twins from the family. Not to mention the lack of diversity in Maine. If they actually made a good film, I would have cared less. Just in every way it stayed from a childhood book that I loved. Now Spider-Man and 007 at least they write in a unique way to reinvent the character. Kind of like Doctor Who. I think these archetypes can be anybody. They don't literally say it's the same person, at least now. If they didn't make James Bond from somewhere in the UK, that would make no sense. It's a stretch to cast Whoopi Goldberg as a Queen Elizabeth. Just like Anne Boleyn in TVATM. She was a real woman who was white, but she is portrayed by a black woman on TVATM. Yeah, I do agree that we should have more new black characters in all sorts of media. Seeing as everything's a remake or part of a franchise these days, it's hard to squeeze in any new original stuff though. There is also long history of whitewashing ethnic characters in movies. Any biblical film, Ghost in the Shell, Prince of Persia, West Side Story. As everything with racism, it's the result of years and years of systematic dehumanization, so we have structures in place which make it extremely hard to just press a button and now everyone's skin color blind. Almost every major character in Western media, books, comics, paintings, for hundreds of years has been white. These mediums are drawn upon regularly for inspiration or adaptation for modern media. Computer games, movies, There are plenty of white savior characters too. Tarzan, King of the Jungle. How many major films this year will have entirely new characters never seen before? I would prefer that actors are allowed to act and take on roles without being pigeonholed into a type. If you're not bothered by Daniel Craig being short and blonde after Brosnan was dark-haired and Irish, why should you care if the new Bond is a black English dude? Because the idea is about representation, and for some reason, some people feel represented more by race than by traits and attributes that line up with their character. You can do a lot of things that would be typically seen as bad as long as it's in the name of social justice and/or representation. I don't really mind if they have a black character recast a white character. This is on a case-by-case basis. Of course, when it can make sense. As long as it's for a better actor, actress. My problem is when it's implemented in the worst way just so they can virtue signal that they have a black character. A big example would be Starfire being black in the live-action Teen Titans when she's an orange alien. Why would it make sense for her to be black? But in a case like if they were to make James Bond black and played by a talented actor like Idris Elba, it wouldn't matter too much as James Bond only makes sense as an alias, and so the name being given to a black Englishman makes enough sense.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.